Okay, we'll be looking at domain and range of graphs, and I'm going to break this into two parts. Okay, so here's our first part. Let's go. Domain and range of graphs. So what domain? Domain is simply the set of all the input values, so everything you're putting in. Essentially, you're going from left to right. So you're looking at the graph left and right horizontally. While range is a set of all your output values. In this case, it's down to up. Now notice I didn't say up and down to up, lowest to highest. The same way I said left to right, lowest to highest vertically, down to up. So we just look at a situation. So here's our first example. Here's a graph, and we're going to look at determining the domain and the range. First, let's just work with the domain. So with the domain, again, it's left and right. So if I look to the left, this graph goes as far left as -10, and it goes as far right as +11. So we have this region from -10 to 11. That's where we're going. So that's what we're focusing in on from left to right. So if I wanted to write this as an inequality, so I focus my attention on where the graph ends. So I'm not looking here, I'm looking down here where I'm pointing. And at the -10, we have a closed circle. So which means the -10 should have some sort of equal sign with the inequality. The same thing with the 11. So my inequality would be -10 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 11. So again, it's in the same numerical order from -10 to 11. And -10 is in fact less than. So to kind of keep you focused, that's why I'm using the less than symbol. Well, there's other ways we can write our domain besides as an inequality. So we'll look at it in set notation, which is essentially the same thing as an inequality. Now notice the set. So what this says, the braces, that's the indication to let us know we are actually using a set. So this says set D, D standing for domain, that uses X, such that, that's what the vertical line is, such that. So set D with all the X such that -10 is less than or equal to X is less than or equal to 7. So it's just a way of writing the inequality using it as a set. So don't let all of this get you confused. But the idea is that the reason I put the D here, because the name of this set is domain. D for domain. And in the set, we use the variable x. And this is saying, in the set, we use an x. And all your x's will fall between -10 and 11 inclusive. And we'll also look at it in interval notation. So in interval notation, again, we're going from -10 to 11, and we're including that. So that's why we're using brackets. So there's our domain. And again, we wrote it in 3 different formats. So now, same situation. Now let's look at the range. And again, range was down to up. So if I look at how far down this goes as far down as -9. And it goes as far up as was that +9. So now in this particular case, I'm noticing that the endpoint, yes, does stop at 9, and actually over here, the highest place on this graph, no matter where you are, is at 9. So we have this region from -9 to +9. Again, from down to up, lowest to highest. So let's look at that as an inequality. So again, I'll put my attention at the endpoints. The endpoints both have the closed circle. So again, the inequality will have the equal to as part of the inequality. Again, my numbers are in numerical order. Now I want to bring your attention to the inequality. I use the variable y, not x, because it is the range. Range uses your outputs or your y's. So my inequality should represent using y's, not x's. So if the inequality is x, you're talking about domain. If it has a y, now you're referring to the range. So now let's look at set notation. Again, set notation is going to mimic interval notation. But now the set is no longer D, it's now R. R for range. So the set R, or the set range, that uses the y such that -9 is less than or equal to y less than or equal to 9. So again, because I'm using range, the variable is going to be the y. And lastly, let's look at interval notation. And again, because both numbers have the equal sign, or both numbers have a closed circle, we will use brackets. So my range in interval notation is open bracket, -9, 9, close bracket. Now, with the three different forms that I'm showing, it's just so that you can be familiar with all the three different ways of writing both the domain and range. You would typically not use all three. You would just kind of get in wherever you fit in. So let's look at another example. All right, so we'll first look at the domain. And again, domain is left to right. So this goes as far left as -9, and it goes as far right as +6. So we have this interval from -9 to +6. So let's go ahead and write it as an inequality. So let's look at the endpoints. We have a closed circle at the -9 and an open circle at the +6. So when we write the inequality, the -9 has the equal, the 6 doesn't have the equal. Again, we're using x's because it is the domain. Now, let's write it in set notation. Again, it's just picking up where inequality is, and we're writing it in the set. So the set is the domain, D, with all x's such that, that's with the bar again. And to reiterate, the braces. Every time I use braces in math means you're working with a set. If I was to put this in parentheses, it wouldn't have the same meaning. If I put it in brackets, totally different meaning. All right, and now let's do interval notation. So because the -9's got the equal, that's going to have a bracket, and this doesn't have an equal, that's going to have the parentheses. All right, let's look at the range for the same picture. All right, range is left, so I'm sorry, down and up. My fault, down and up. Notice I didn't stop at where the endpoint was. I went as far down as the picture is. I'm going to go as far up as the picture. So in this case, we are not stopping at the endpoints. We are literally going as far down. So when I shade it in, you can see the entire graph is within the shaded region. And so our region goes from -6 to +4. So let's do the interval notation. Now what we'll be focusing in on is the high and low points, not the end points. It goes as low as that -6. So at this low point, because there's no open circle here, it is understood to be a closed circle. So we are including both the -6 and we're including the +4. Again, the only time you don't include is if there was an open circle. So the inequality will have both equal signs. There's a -6 is less than or equal to y. Again, it has a little y because we're working with the range. It's less than or equal to 4. Let's look at it in set notation. Again, it's going to be the same thing, but now the set is the range, and we're using y as our variable. And last, interval notation. Interval notation will have a bracket and another bracket, 2 brackets.